The Biden-Harris ticket is the most radically pro-abortion campaign in history. They and other politicians are Catholics in name only and abandon innocent lives. President Trump protects those lives.
Even Notre Dame is distancing itself from its famous ex-football coach after Lou Holtz questioned Joe Biden's faith. Keep in mind that Biden has spoken poignantly about his faith for decades, and Donald Trump's closest encounter with the Bible seems to be this staged photo op. In newly released audio tapes secretly recorded by his niece, Trump's sister, Marianne Trump Berry, certainly seems to agree.
The only time Donald went to church that I know him, at least when Dad wasn't bringing us everything, was when he got married. Yes, and over the last several years, when the cameras were at the church. Exactly.
Another self-proclaimed Christian Trump ally, Jerry Falwell Jr., was forced to resign as president of Liberty University when his former pool attendant alleged that he had a long sexual affair with Falwell's wife and that Falwell, quote, enjoyed watching. Falwell and his wife have denied these allegations. Joining me now, Bishop William Barber, co-chairman of the Poor People's Campaign and author of We Are Called to Be a Movement, and Reverend Jim Wallace, President Obama's faith advisor and author of Christ in Crisis, Reclaiming Jesus in a Time of Fear, Hate, and Violence, which will be available in paperback next week. Bishop Barber, I think I have to start with you, the birthday man of the hour. Happy birthday, sir. I'm so honored that you joined me for your birthday. I'm very happy to have you with me on a very special day. You are someone that is indisputably, I would call, an evangelical. You are the pastor of Greenleaf Christian Church in Goldsboro, North Carolina. You are actively reaching out to poor people. In your view, are people like Jerry Falwell and some of the people we see at Trump rallies calling out these Christian epithets, are they evangelicals?
Oh, and not even in name only. In fact, I'm actually encouraged to see Jim and so many pastors who are standing together and recognizing how dangerous Christian nationalism is, what one of my professors called Americanity, not Christianity, and how dangerous silence is, not only to the nation, but to the church. You know, the heretical claims that we saw at the RNC cannot go unchallenged. But let me also say, Dr. King was right. Prophetic Christianity must be a headlight and not a tail light. It's not just, criticizing individuals. We have got to shine a light of truth and call politicians to follow that truth. And with police murdering and lynching and killing Black people brazenly and openly, let's sit with that for a moment. And then on top of that, 180,000 people needlessly dead and 140 million people poor and low wealth, many of them hurting and dying before and during this crisis, and 100,000 people, thousands of people dying from not being insured and 40 million facing eviction. Our endorsement has to be, has to be more than just anti-Trump. It has to be more than just let's return to civility and good government. We must endorse a way forward as a headlight that declares we need transformative change, and every nation needs to hear this. Woe unto those who legislate evil and rob the poor of their rights, which is why in the Poor People's Campaign, we've also have a clear moral agenda that we must endorse and push all our candidates towards.
Reverend Wallace, I want to ask you, not everybody believes in a higher being. Not everybody goes to church every Sunday. But for those people who do, you have to wonder, they have to acknowledge God is not a God of confusion. He's not going to tell people in the same faith one thing and someone else another. So as people who declare themselves pro-life, what are your thoughts on people who have just taken the name evangelical for themselves to endorse something that really is not pro-life at all?
Well, thank you, Tiffany, and happy birthday, brother. We're trying to change something very big in this election. We're trying to change what the religious issues are. And as you just showed so well, people like Jerry Falwell and others have tried to control what the religious issues are for decades in the election. We're trying to say now that racism is a religious issue in this election. Racism is central religiously, as you were saying. Let's go to the Bible. The foundation of politics for people of faith is the first book of the Bible, Genesis 1, verse 26, where it says, God made every human being in God's image and likeness, no exceptions. So the kind of violence that my brother was talking about, the idea of white supremacy and racism being fueled, is an offense to the image of God. This is theological. This isn't just political. And how do we, in fact, understand the kind of violence we've seen is throwing away Imago Dei, the image of God? That's where we start. So for white Christians, I'm a white Christian, so I want to say, when the phrase white Christian, when the most important word in that phrase is not Christian, but white, we have a problem. When the adjective cancels the noun, we have a problem. So we have to show that isn't the case. Let's talk about how when you fuel racism and bigotry and hate and fear and violence, which in fact this White House is doing, that is contrary to the way of Christ. This isn't liberal, Democrat, left, right. And this election isn't just electoral, this is confessional. We'll all be in that booth under God. And I'm saying to fuel and use and campaign on racism is contrary to the teachings of Jesus Christ. So I want to confess Christ in that voting booth, and I will.
Reverend Wallace, have you endorsed in this campaign yet?
Well, I want to say that this is an election unlike any other election in my lifetime. Sojourners has a famous bumper sticker that says, God is not a Republican or a Democrat. I still believe that, but this election is different. And because Joe Biden has said he wants to make racism a religious issue in this campaign, and he's doing that, I agree with my brother Barbara here. This is about going forward. This is about a whole different direction. This is turning around from America's original sin. So I am going to be supporting Joe Biden and out there in the campaign, focusing on the election full time to make racism a religious issue in this election. So that's why I'm doing it. That's why I'm supporting Joe, good and decent man of faith. But it's because he's willing to make racism a religious issue, and we're going to turn that around in this election.
Very quickly, we're out of time, Reverend Barber, but very quickly, we have like 10 seconds left.
Okay. Well, I think that what the issue is, if we endorse and say that systemic racism is sin, systemic poverty is sin, ecological devastation is sin, a war economy that takes from people is sin, this false moral religious racist nationalism is sin, then it can be clear who you endorse because you look at policies. And that's what we are saying in the Poor People's Campaign. The people of faith must be the headlight and not the tail light, and challenge the lies wherever the lies are, and we must move forward.
All right. Thank you so much, and happy birthday, Reverend Barber. Thank you both for joining me.